Well, hi everyone. Welcome to our talk, Start Local, Think Global. We are very, very honored to be a part of this groundbreaking conference that the Indie World Order is pulling off for us. So today we are all here to learn the basic steps and phases of localization of a video game, and also help you know what to look for in a localization team. But first things first, we have a first timer with us, Sara Rodriguez. This is the first talk that she's giving, so we're gonna introduce ourselves. So I'm gonna let Sara take it away.
Thank you. Hi. My name is Sarah, and as Alexis said, this is my first time speaking, so please be patient with me. I'm 42. I was born in Madrid, in Spain, and I have been a project manager in the translation industry for more than 15 years now. And video games had always been very important in my personal life too. So 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to participate and manage the localization of AAA games, such as The Division 2, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Mortal Kombat 11, and The Last of Us 2. And now I'm helping Terra to hopefully become a benchmark in this industry. So we know you have been attending a lot of talks these days. So in this little conference, we want you to learn some tips and basic localization concepts. So we hopefully, guys, help you to expand your market and globalize your product. I know you will understand how I feel now that I really love my day-by-day job. We are very lucky to share this experience with you. So thanks so much for having us here today, and hope you enjoy really our presentation. And now let's see what Alexis has to say about himself.
Well, nothing as impressive as working in The Last of Us 2. I can assure everyone.
You're a fan.
But yeah, that I am. Hi everyone. My name is Alexis Firo. I'm based in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I've been working in the gaming industry in some way or another ever since my first gig when I was 18 years old. I'm 32 at the moment at a video game store in my hometown. Currently, I work as a marketing manager at Terra Localizations, and also I do a little bit of PR and localization consultancy for an indie dev studio, Astral Clock Tower Studios, who is presenting here at the Indie World Order conference as well with our game Crystal. You should go check it out. And also, I'm one of the co-hosts in a podcast about video games and localization called Open World. We're going to share some links by the end. But enough about ourselves. Let's jump in to some key concepts of what we're going to talk about. This talk is going to last about 50 minutes about that. We have 1 hour, so we're going to save all the questions for the end of the talk, right? We're going to have about 10 minutes.
Yeah,
so
hopefully.
We want to tell you, I believe that we're going to be able to do quite a few questions. We're going to be talking about some little things that you can do when developing your video game that will make localizing globally much easier. We will look at the differences between translation and localization, and we will also be talking about the role of a localization team, what does a loc team do, or even a publisher in this whole process. Finally, we will show you the different types of workflow in the localization process, and of course, as I said, we will try to answer all of those questions that you always wanted to ask, but never dare or never had a chance up until this talk by the end of it.
Yes, but first, let's see a small introduction to the topics that we are going to talk about. We will start by defining the concept of translation and localization so that no one gets lost in our speech. Within the localization, we will talk about culture and transcreation, two of the pillars of a good localization. And once we are all on the same page, we will try to give you some information about the different markets and researching you can do yourself while developing your video game. We will tell you also that the localization team entails and the different type of localization teams you may have. Of course, we will talk about the main tools for a good localization also, And we'll take a little look at the dubbing. And finally, after all this, you will finally know what we mean when we say that we want to help you go global.
Now, before we jump in, let me make a little note for you guys about something that while we were preparing this talk, we realized. As you can see, I'm based in Buenos Aires. Sarah is based in Madrid. She's from Spain. So the word localization is a very long word for a non-English speaker, for a person who has English as a second language, right?
Yeah.
So, and overall in the industry, localization is usually just referred to as loc or loc work or something like that. So if you happen to catch us say these short versions of localization, we are referring to just that, okay? Loc team, loc job, loc.
Yeah. But first of all, we want to make the distinction between localization and translation. So what are really the differences? Well, we usually talk about translation when it comes to the game's text and assets from one language into another. This is only applicable to a small fraction of a game text, maybe the UI or online store. An important thing you should know about translation is that it is the most literal way to make a message reach audiences of different languages. So by this we mean that translation is something somehow aseptic, literal, and could practically be done word by word, so to speak. So this is the basic and less complex part of the localization. But what is localization then? Well, Alexis will tell you.
So what is localization? Like Sarah just said, localization goes far beyond the simple translation of just a few texts. It involves concepts such as inclusivity, culturalization, and transcreation that we will elaborate throughout the talk. These elements are what really help achieve the total immersion of the player in the universe of your game. And also to make it's what makes it interesting for your game to be pop on an online store too, right?
Yeah, that's right. And to help you understand it, on the screen, we name some of the most important concepts that localization involves. We have already talked about translation, but what comes after that when we speak about localizing a video game? Well, the first thing is editing. Editing is what happens right after the translation. It means correcting stylistic and semantic errors, taking translation, and making sure the terminology is correct and consistent throughout all the parts of the game. So this can be done using a glossary, but we will talk about glossaries later in another slide, so don't worry about it now.
Then the second part of the localization process is the proofreading step. This helps correcting any spelling errors and other typos that might have happened in the translation process.
Yeah, and another important step is integration. In this phase, we make sure all the translated materials display correctly on the screen by respecting the codes and tags of UI and in-game text.
Now, regional adaptation is a very important step in the localization process. Let's tell some examples. For instance, in China, you cannot show blood, skulls, or any religious symbolism in games. Korea frowns on playing around with religious themes. Religion is always a sketchy subject to tackle on video games, so there are different issues wherever you market your game. But to move aside from religion, for example, in Australia, you need to remove all alcohol and drugs from your game.
Yeah. And last but not least, linguistic QA and testing. So this is the final step. Here, we test the quality of the translation and its integration into the game. This can be done either by your external log team or internally by your testers. But please, if you do it internally, just take into account that you will need testers who are native speakers of the localized languages. This is very important. Otherwise, all the hard work done before can be ruined.
Now, another important thing we want you guys to know is that it's not necessary to localize the entire video game just from the minute one, right? Just from the start. There are several types of localization. In the partial localization, the UI and online store text are what usually are translated, and subtitles are added to all the languages that you want to ship your game.
Yeah, and on the other hand, in the total localization option, all the assets of your video game will be translated and localized. Dubbing is, of course, included in this option. We could not talk about dubbing, but unfortunately, we don't have the time to dive into it today. We would really like to, but we would need another full talk about it. So we are just going to mention it slightly.
Yeah, I mean, dubbing alone is a very complex subject for which we do not have the time in this talk. But we will mention basic things that you should know throughout the localization tips, but we have to mention it.
Yeah.
So we have seen so far that localizing depends on the language, right? That's for sure. But language is not just ways of speaking. Our language defines the way that we see the world, the way we interact with the world, and also the way that we interact with others. So that's where culturalization takes all these factors into account when it comes to translating the original message, not only into the language that you're localizing it, but adapting it and making it suitable for each type of audience. It is what really, really makes your product go global. As you can see on the screen, some or most of the important factors that you must take into account so that the localization and the culturalization is suitable to the target audience. These can be keywords, maps, historical, and even political context. I mean, if your game takes place in a country or a specific historical moment, you probably don't want to offend anyone or make any mistakes in data. This is very important within the cultural context. Think of game sagas like Civilization, Age of Empires, or even Assassin's Creed. Just to name a few, this type of games simply would not make any sense if they did not take into account all these different factors that you see on screen.
Yes, that's right. And to give you a clear example of what Alexis is telling you, let's see the culturalization work of Resident Evil 4. In this game, the main character, Leon, we all know Leon, right, arrives in a town in Toledo, Spain. Okay, all good, except there are so many glitches in this game that it's not even offensive, but hilarious. I remember playing this game with my friends, and we couldn't believe how little research work had been done. So in these pictures, you can see how Toledo people still live as in the 16th century. And the clergy, they seem to have come out of the time of the Inquisition. They are dressed like Torquemada. Not to mention the fact that the mayor of the town is called Graham, and his daughter is Ashley. So not a Spanish name at all. Yep. Okay, so but let's talk about the dubbing. The dubbing was done with an accent that is certainly not Toledo's. It was more like Latin American's accent. So what a mess. And, we're talking about a AAA game here, Alexis.
Yeah, of course, it seems that there was not a great work in the culturalization of an actual existing city in Spain, right? I mean, even the game was released in so many consoles, and it's just something that it just continues, right? Maybe with a remake, they might change some things like that. But we could say that plenty of things turned people away from the actual purpose of the game, right? Which was to be scary.
Yep. Yeah, it was laughing it. Yeah. But let's not lose the thread of our talk. As we talked at the beginning, we want to define two very important concepts within culturalization, which are transcreation and context. Transcreation takes care of adapting the puns and the instructions hidden in the creative messages of the game to make sure that any player can enjoy them. As you will see in the pictures on the screen later, this is one of the most important things to take into account, and it relies heavily on another concept, context. Translators need to know the concept of a situation or conversation for their translations to become transcreations. In this way, the game goes beyond the screen. And believe us, a game can go down in history only because of a good or a bad transcreation. Now, we'll see some examples of transcreation, but first, think about this, okay? Can you imagine not understanding a joke in a game like Monkey Island, or not being able to solve an uncharted puzzle because you don't understand the instructions, or even not knowing where to go because you don't get the pirate pun from Sea of Thieves? Well, it happens more than we would like to. So let's take a look, Alexis.
Let's. Well, we have an example from the Arabic localization for Uncharted 3. Uncharted 3, AAA game, Naughty Dog, Sony PlayStation exclusive. Well, things can happen too. This is a perfect example of what you don't want for your game. Arabic players heavily complained about the translation, even suggesting that it had been made using a translation machine. Now, machine translation is often seen as a fast and easy solution to translate your game. It's like you put your text in English on one side and then it just translates it into the other box in the other language. But that's just what it does. It translates it. It doesn't localize it. It doesn't put attention to any concept that truly make your game accessible and accurate enough for the target audience, right? Machine-based translation in video games just won't do when it comes to portray exactly what your game needs. So it will most certainly cause it to backfire.
Yep. And not to dwell too much within transcreation, but let's see another example in the French version of Sea of Thieves. This is a clear example of how necessary context is for translators. This game really needs transcreation, so the players feels the sensation of sailing the seas as a pirate. As you can see in the tweet on screen, users were not very happy about the French version of the video game. We all know about Twitter and the trolls hidden there, but bad tweets about your localization is something you certainly want to avoid if you want your game to succeed. But let's talk about happy endings in transcreation, okay? Yes, they sometimes happen.
They exist.
Yeah. They're not unicorns. So we couldn't avoid to mention a classic success in transcreation. See how Spanish speakers celebrate the Monkey Island transcreation of puns and jokes. This game is considered yet today one of the best localization works ever among gamers in Spain. It keeps on entertaining new gamers nowadays, and that's also because and thanks to the great original localization hard work.
So, as you can probably see by now, it's not just about translating, but about recreating the original message and intention of the game without language being a barrier for players, right? So this includes the translation and adaptation of names of characters and places that you have intentionally created to be fun or witty, right? And that, with a good transcreation, will mark generations in different parts of the globe with your game forever. I mean, we still are talking about Monkey Island, which is how, like 30 years old, something like that.
Yeah. Yes, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
One of my first video games.
Yeah, and I can imagine that it's one of many people's first video games, right? So moving forward, and if culturalization is very important, right, to reach certain audience, we cannot fail to mention the inclusivity and accessibility. Because when it comes to reaching the public of your video game, you have to take into account all types of players that exist. It is one of the main points of our key concepts. It's no surprise that the female gaming market has grown immensely, and it just keeps growing as the days go by, right? But also, we think that the empowerment of women that grew together with the amount of women players should also lead to the change of games conception.
Yeah, we're just not talking about including female characters in your video game, but about the female concept in games. We think it's necessary nowadays to listen to feminine vision when creating the lore, the challenges, and the jokes of games. Also, to wonder about sexualization in the character appearances and see the pictures on the screen. So, which one do you really think make your women gamers community feel comfortable? Well, it seems very clear to me. So also, there are a lot of conferences and talks about women in video games in the internet. So you can have them as a reference, and you can also get in touch with different women groups and associations. So please do it if you're not sure about how to make it about women community. Do some research. So Alexis, we were talking about markets.
Yeah, we were talking about markets and we mentioned China briefly a couple of slides back. You guys remember? Well, let's talk a little bit about China. China, it's no surprise that it's one of the largest video game markets in the world, right? And women are 49% of those users. And as we said, this is growing. This is not a fixed number. Now, biggest market in the world, whatever. Well, okay, Ale, I'm Ale. How big? Well, in the third quarter of 2020, China alone saw a revenue of 10.4 billion US dollars in gaming. So when we say big, we mean an amount of gamers equivalent to the populations of the US, Japan, Germany, France, and the UK combined. US, Japan, Germany, France, 5 countries combined, and half of those players are women. So, I mean, do the
Do your
numbers.
number.
You really,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah. Uh, so we are talking about inclusivity, and we don't want to forget about people who suffer from any sort of disability. They are, in fact, the 20% of the video game consumers all over the world. So we have to take them into account when developing your game. Accessibility is key for many people on the planet. So imagine a player not distinguishing if something is right or wrong because he or she is colorblind, and you have included the basic colors green and red for good and bad, for success and failure. Well, you can see some real comments on screen from people who really found difficult to play a game due to their disabilities. And if you think the tests in these comments are too small for you to read them, then you know how they feel when they don't have the opportunity to enlarge the subtitles or maybe the on screen text. These are really small changes in the design of your game that can really make the difference for this community and can also make your market grow. So let's see what else Alexis has to say about market.
Yeah. Uh, all of this can open your market, guys, and get many more players to reach your game without having a big budget. We're not talking about budgeting here, right? We are talking about things that will pave the way for the localization of your game. Now, we know that this is not an easy task, but it's a challenge worth taking, trust me. So, let us walk you through yet some other things to keep in mind to prepare your video game from its development. Then we can guarantee you that your localization will be faster, easier, and will certainly contain fewer errors. And not to mention, it will make you save a lot of time and money.
Yeah, small details can make your game stand out. Little things like we talked before, just making subtitles adaptable or including audio description can change the lives of your players. So let's talk about, for example, vibrations. Vibrations in the controllers can help gamers with any sort of disability to understand what's going on in the game. In fighting games, the controller can vibrate when they get hit or they hit the enemy. Or in racing games, for example, when you steer a course or hit an obstacle. This can really improve the immersion in your game, not only for people with disabilities, but for all the video game players. And as Alexis told us when we spoke about culturalization, immersion is key when we talk about killing it in some markets.
Yes, and as we stated before, market research is very important. To know which markets to go for needs some research on your end that will ultimately help you know to which languages you should localize your game, right? I mean, you can do this research yourself, or if you have a publisher, you can do it with them, or they can do it for you. But we want you guys to keep in mind that there are many kinds of markets before setting out to localize your video game.
Yeah, surely you are not wondering about if you really need to translate your game into languages other than English. Well, this is a difficult question if you turn off your emotions and just look at the raw numbers. And we say this because we are sure you want to make it in markets like Asia or the US. But we are indies, and surely we have a fairly tight budget. So getting it right from the beginning can mean everything for me. We don't want to bury you behind a pile of figures. There are many other talks on the internet with tons of figures about markets.
Yeah,
But we do want to see how surprising the video game market is. While we were preparing this talk, we came across a surprising country when it comes to data. Yeah, Alexis.
Finland.
And this country is Finland. Finland is a 5.5 million people country that spends an average of 500 euros a year per inhabitant on video games.
That's a
So,
lot.
yeah, guys, this means that if someone does not play video games in Finland, for example, his neighbor is spending 1,000 euro per year in video games. So, how crazy is that? Uh, Alexis and I have already applied for residency in Finland, and we are thinking of moving there. That's a dream come true.
It sounds like a game in heaven, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Now, we're talking about markets for a little bit and how you yourself can do the necessary searches before deciding in which languages or cultures you want to launch your video game, right? Now, let us give you some points to keep an eye out when doing your market research. Now, for example, some platforms are more popular on specific regions. Let's say if you're doing a game for mobile, maybe some markets are more avid to play their games on an Apple device, right, on an iOS, and some others on an Android device. This is important. Now, the size of the audience in dominant language markets for your type of game is something that it's usually a best practice to check out.
Yeah. Also, cultural norms, features, and specific restrictions in the target market. As we spoke before, you have to do some research about this to make sure your video game can make it in some market. Okay. And also, you can check the success of similar games in those specific markets. Is your type of video game a hit in China, maybe? Or maybe you want to be a pioneer.
Now, income per capita, this is something that you probably should check out when researching markets. Again, Finland. We love Finland. You will know even more with the slides. Think about which market, really spends money in gaming, right? And also which market spends money in games that are localized in their own languages.
Yeah. And last, legal regulations of each specific market. Okay, this is a very important point, guys. So let's talk a little bit more about this, Alexis, okay?
Sure, join me in the next slide, guys. Legal regulations. One thing that you or your publisher, again, will have to be aware of are the rating systems for each market that you are aiming for. Now, every market has its own rating system with different peculiarities that you might not be aware of, at least until now, that you're in this talk, but they exist. And if your game isn't prepared for, let's say, the Japanese market, the zero rating organization will surely flag many issues that you'll need to revise, do over, to spend time, waste time in order to ship your game for Japanese players. So you see, again, not just language that you need to take care of in the localization process. Now, let me walk you through these ones that we have on screen. First one with the 16 over there, we have the PEGI, which is the Pan-European Game Information, which acts on the entire European Union. Then we have the ESRB, the Entertainment Software Rating Board for the USA. Then, as I mentioned, the Zero Rating, which stands for Computer Entertainment Rating Organization, which acts in Japan. Now, for Germany, even though they are in the European Union, they have their own rating system. They have a system that translates to in English, because we tried, both of us, to
we tried, really.
say it in German, but we will just destroy the language. So I do apologize. In English, it stands for Self-Control in Entertainment Software. And last but certainly not least, in Australia, you have the ACB, the Australian Classification Board for Australia.
Yeah, but let's see these ratings acting on the same game to understand the way of thinking in different parts of the planet, okay? Let's take Pokemonic, for example. As you can see on the screen, different markets rate the same game differently. We have ACB for Australia, rating it as a PG, which is recommended with the company of a novel. Zero rating for Japan as an A, which means for all ages. And the PEGI for the European Union for this game was for ages above 7. Okay. And last, the ESRB for the US rated it as an E. This means for all ages. So the same game can be rated very differently depending on cultural, religious, or sexual issues. This is something really to think and to do some research about. Think about it, okay? I think you are on mute now, Alex.
Yes, I am. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I was just doing a mimic for you guys. Maybe someone understands. I don't know.
That's the clip for this talk.
That's
Please,
the micro
someone make a
content.
clip.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We will talk about that later. Well, as we told you from the beginning, guys, we are trying to make your video game go global. So let's recap the talk so far. We've talked about localization, culturalization, transcreation, inclusivity, accessibility, markets, and even legal regulations. So far, so good. We've been going through 30 minutes of our talk. Well, this slide is a break with around the world video in the back. Me being silent, maybe you were playing around the world video in the back. So the conclusion so far is that regardless of any language and beliefs that players have, they all deserve the same experience as an English-speaking player, right? Isn't that what we want? To have our game enjoyed by players everywhere with the same quality of translation?
Yeah, and you may be probably now thinking, but where do I start? Okay, this is all very interesting, but how can I start to find my perfect lock team? Well, first things first, luckily you are here today with us in this little talk to learn a few things about how to prepare, what to look for, and also to think about your future lock team as an extension of your own team. But what is a lock team? Yeah, I know I have said lock like 5 times in this sentence. Lock, 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 lock.
So, yeah, we haven't defined.
Sorry.
We mentioned it, but we haven't defined who or what a localization team is, right? Well, let's just go right into it. When we talk about a loc team, we want to make reference to the person, team, or teams handling your localization. So the size of this team will definitely vary depending on the size and stage of your project. So that means that we refer to freelance translator, or if you want to outsource it, we're talking about LSPs, which stands for Language Service Providers, and even in-house localization team.
Exactly. Depending on your budget and the length of your video game, You can decide whether to localize it by looking for freelancers, translators, and testers just to help you with the task. You can also create an in-house team that is dedicated to localization, or you can even hire an external company that is in charge of finding the optimal resources for each language and manage the deadlines. All this is up to you.
Exactly. So what you need to bear in mind is that if you do decide to hire an outsourced localization team, is that sharing the same vision that you have for your game is very important. Uh, the localization team will accompany you throughout the local process and even the development of the game, and can help you from the early stages to take into account factors that you had not even thought about. That's why it's very important that you share the same philosophy and that you feel that they are a part of your team, because they truly are. They are a lot of people, or a few people, or maybe one person who will work with you side by side for the success of your video game in different markets and even globally, right?
Yes, and you also have to know that there are many things that you can take of yourself before you pass the torch to your brand new lock team. Like Alexis just said, think of them as an extension of your own team. They will help you make your game global and reach those players in every market you aim for. You can pave the way for them by preparing your video game from development so that later localization is much easier.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Sarah. And here we're gonna go through some baby steps that you can take to start. Let's jump right in. Now, first, we would like to talk about fonts. Okay, make sure that your font is compatible with all alphabets and their spelling signs. Languages like Russian, Chinese, and many more, including our Spanish, need special characters. And as you can see on the screen, the code cracked in this game, and so did the testing, if there was any testing.
Yeah. Also, please keep in mind that some languages, like Arabic, are written from right to left. This is a basic localization if you want to reach Arabic market. Also, text boxes. The adaptable text boxes are the way to go. I think that most languages are 30 or 40% longer than English, and it is not always possible to limit the number of characters to get the message into other languages. This is very important.
Now, another thing that you should take into account are subtitles for the deaf or for the hard of hearing, right? So these sort of subtitles, usually called SDH subtitles, are the ones that transcribe ambient sounds that help produce the video's perspective. In the video, talkers may respond to off-screen noises, as we see here in this example from The Last of Us. You can see that there is a soldier talking, but it's not on screen. It doesn't appear on screen. So we have a subtitle there that even has an arrow pointing to the direction in which the soldier is speaking, right? So the hard of hearing or the deaf can know what's going on around them. Now, in this system, the file can be available to foreign language viewers, or also to anyone that might be deaf or, as I said, hard of hearing. Maybe I'm repeating myself, but you get the concept. Now, easy levels. For people with motor disabilities, or even for younger players, for kids. We all spent the lockdown in this pandemic at home, and some of us, I am a dad, have little children that want to play video games with us. So please, send some help, make some easy modes. We need to play with them, right? So this
Yeah,
example, again, from The Last of Us, you see that they went all out with this one. Very light, easy, moderate, hard, even a chance to customize the difficulties. Play the game as the player wants, or as the player is able to, right?
yeah. As we have said, we are trying to give you advice on how to prepare your video game for localization yourself. But for your log team, there are slightly more specific steps that you should take. You have developed your video game and you know all the secrets about it. And you purely have in mind how you want your game to get into the rest of the world. Well, all this information must get to your log team. And the way to do it is through a style guide. So please, Alexis, tell us more about a style guide.
Sure thing. Well, a style guide is what helps define things like the tone of your video game, linguistic characteristics, the type of formats, the target audience, and many other things for your localization team to get from the beginning. This document can also contain a summary of the main content of the game lore, descriptions of characters, so that your log team is the first to immerse themselves in the universe of your video game and make it easier for them to localize it in different languages and cultures.
Yep, and we don't want to get you dizzy with too many concepts, but in case there is a translator in the room, we can't fail to mention glossaries. Glossaries and style guides are the Bible and the lifeline for translators. Well, aside from a good project manager, of course. Glossary yeah, is a list of keywords within any project. They are usually created in Excel files and shared between linguists, the log team, the developers, everyone involved. It is a file that will not stop growing throughout all the localization process.
Exactly, Sarah. Glossaries are what help you keep key terms, proper names, and toponyms consistent throughout the translation process. This is what allows your localization team to make sure that a uniform format and unified principles are applied when to whichever terms are used. They also give you a uniform approach to translation and allow you to set rules for working with made up words. I mean, most games, including dark fantasy or fantasy games or games with a rich storyline, probably has a lot of made up terms, right? So, this is a crucial requirement if several translators are also involved in the project at the same time. Without a glossary, you'll end up with a number of different translations for the same terms, which means that you will have to spend a bunch of time and money hunting down, correcting all these inconsistencies, and yeah, finding where they are too, where they live, right?
Yeah, and so you can see the importance of glossaries. Let's see a very simple example on screen. This is a real example we found when localizing a AAA video game. We obviously can't say the name of the game due to NDAs, so we call it the boat thing. And we borrowed some random pictures from the internet. So as you can see, English term boat can be used practically for any element that floats and flows the seas. But in Spanish, it needs a term for each of its variants. And also, you know that Alexis and I, we both are Latin and we both speak Spanish. But even between us, the name of the different boats are different for our Spanish varieties.
That's right.
Alexis, as he told us in his introduction, is from Argentina, and I'm from Spain. So let us discuss briefly some of these boat examples here. As you can see, for example, the Viking boat in Spain would be called dracar. That comes directly from other languages. But for Latin American Spanish, its name is barco vikingo, which literally means Viking boat.
Yeah, I mean, let's mention, for example, the great ships in the colonial era that ploughed the seas with large sails. I believe that in Spain they are called velero, which is in English it's a sailboat, but in Latin America they are commonly known or referred to as barco de vela, which is a sailing boat. I mean, it's the same, but as you can see from my Spanish and from Sarah's Spanish, it's a bit different, right?
Yeah. Hope this can help you understand the importance of a good glossary when localizing a video game. But Well, it is clear that we can play with the fact that we both speak Spanish, and that's not fair for you guys. So, Alexis, can we play a little riddle? I think these people need a little distraction right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah? Okay. So, can you tell me what you see in these four pictures? It's not a captcha, so I'm not talking about the guy on the bicycle, okay?
Well, that would be too easy then, right? Well, in the first one, I'm seeing snow with trees, snow and a sunset,
Yep.
depth on snow, but mostly snow and a guy on a bike, but snow. That's a common determinator, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure. It's no, you're not a robot. But if you were born in Finland, again, Finland, that great country, you would see four different types of snow, as the Finnish
Wow.
language has up to 40 words to define snow, depending on its state, shape, and color. So these are just some of them. And we can even pronounce a single one, right?
No, no, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna go there and butcher the language. But let me recall the fun fact that Finland is one of the biggest gaming hubs in the world. Uh, in 2019 alone, the gaming industry saw over 2 billion euros in revenue. And as we mentioned, it's a country with just 5.5 million people. So you see, demographics alone just don't cut it when it comes to doing your research. Sometimes, even a small country can be quite an interesting place to ship your game.
Yeah, and in case it has not been clear so far, we love Finland. And if there's any Finns in our audience, we encourage you to confirm the data we are giving here.
Yes, that would be very very fun to see if we are
That
right.
would be
I know
great.
I know we are though. But, now this is the last part of our presentation, guys. Do not despair. We already know what localization consists of, right? Some steps that we can take internally to make it easier, and we have decided if we are going to do it internally or through an LSP. I mean, or at least we set the seed for that question, right? But what tools do we need to localize our video game? Now, we're going to jump in to tell you about the simplest ones that you should know.
Yeah, we have already told you that usually the information for the translation is shared through Excel files. It is important that, as you can see on the screen, these files contain as much context as possible for translators. As you can see, information is vital. Uh, some information like, for example, which character is speaking, to whom is she or he speaking to, the situational context, and even the tone or intention in the speech make it possible for translators to understand the message accurately. Um, and you guys have to bear in mind that your log team will ask you too many questions. And then when reporting a bug, the tester will have to give the repro step. Okay, the only way to connect all that information is to have a common repository with versioning and a clear unique name or maybe an ID with which to refer to each line within the entire build of the game.
Yes, and sometimes it happens that the resources still need more context to be able to translate correctly, right? When we say resources, we talk about the people in your localization team, right? So this is where queries are important. Normally, these questions are made directly to the developers. I mean, you are the ones who have all the info. The game is your baby, right? So through the Excel files shared between all parts of the team, it's how you ask all those questions. Uh, as a localization, the localization side ourselves, we need the developers to do their part here. We're talking to you guys, so answering those queries quickly with a clear, concise answer will play in favor of the localization of the video game ultimately, right?
Yeah, and after all this long process that we have been talking about, we have reached the testing step. The way to communicate between the tester team and the log team whether you decide to go with an in-house log team or to hire an outsourced company is through bug reports. So in this report, the tester describes the error that he or she has found, classifies it, and gives the repro step to reproduce it. Okay, so take into account that linguists may not always agree with the opinion of the testers. So there must be room for a healthy discussion here. Please take it into account. But once the bug is solved, the developers insert the change in the build and everyone is happy. And the good news is the most contests your log team has, the less queries and surely the less bugs to report. You will save money, time, and improve the final quality of the localized project. So everyone gains.
So we're getting close to the end, guys. Trust me, I'm not lying now. But we cannot end this conversation and this talk without mentioning content management systems, right? CMS programs that will help you improve the workflow of all development and localization work.
Yeah. Within a video game, there are tons of different formats that you will have to pinpoint in order to share with the log team. From pictures, text, to titles, maybe websites or audio if you decide to dub the game. So all these files must be easily shared with your QA team, your log team, the testers, the developers, everyone involved. Believe me, this is for your mental health and also to ensure the final quality of the product. Again, as you can see in the diagram on the screen, this is very important for the workflow to really work.
Now, this is not mandatory, okay? You can decide if you want to use a CMS program to perform all of these tasks, but what you should take into account is the traceability of the materials that you are sharing. This means the versioning of the building and the ability to take snapshots. So all of these things are crucial when you're working with a large volume of ever-changing text. Now, here we are at the end of our talk, guys. Let's recap in case someone maybe came in later. We have talked about what it is to localize a video game, about the importance of different languages and cultures. We have tried to show you a little bit about inclusivity and accessibility, and we have told you about some simple steps that you can take from the development of your video game to make localization easier.
Yeah. We have tried to define the basic concept so that communication with your log team is more fluid through glossaries, the style guide, queries, and back reports. And we have also talked to you about the tools that we usually use during the localization process. And finally, we slightly mentioned, and again, story about this, about dubbing in video games. So I don't think we're forgetting anything, right, Alexis?
Well, maybe just one thing, and just because we're running out of time, but we certainly hope that you know a few more things about how to start locally developing your video game. But this is the thing that is still missing. What about the name of our talk? Start local, think global. What does global really mean, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're right. When we say global in this talk, as you can see, we are not just talking about your video game reaching all countries, but for us, it's about reaching everyone on the planet. Okay, we have talked about inclusivity, accessibility, and culturalization, right? But also, you have to understand that not everyone has knowledge of a second language that allows them to play without having to translate the content in their mind all the time. There are so many Glorias in the world, and they all want to play your game. So let's start with it.
Yeah, hopefully we have helped you guys on that with this talk. But if you have any more questions, please reach out to us. We have a Discord server that we are going to share on the chat in just a moment. We're going to leave also our Discord IDs for you guys to maybe congratulate us for this talk, maybe troll us in case you didn't like it, or just share more info, experiences about our favorite video games, perhaps.
Yeah, and we also play video games together at Terra with our translators. So you can join us and let's have some fun.
Yeah. Andrew, are you around? Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. And we have a couple of more minutes. So, in case if there were any questions in the chat, we can jump right in.
I am around. We do have some time for
Yes.
questions. Other
Ooh.
people are going to be. Other people have a moment to type. The talk was fantastic, by the way. That was amazing to see the depth into the
Thank you very
topic.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we tried. We tried to.
Yeah, that was great. All right, so we have a question here. So
Yep.
with most small indies having low to no budgets, what's something small projects should do today, like right now, with their projects to have a good start towards localization once they have the sales to do it right? What's something we could burn into our minds?
That's a very good question, isn't it?
Yep.
How to start? Well, I would say that first thing that you should do is do your research when it comes to market. You should think about what type of game are you making and just try to see if the style of your game, if the genre of your game, maybe you're making a JRPG kind of game or an action game or I don't know, a casual AFK game. Where does those type of games rank best, right? And also, again, mind your fonts, mind
Yep.
text boxes being adaptable. So then, for
Yeah.
example,
The small things.
German,
Yeah. The small
Is
things we
30.
talked about. Yeah.
That's one thing that everyone can do without a budget. I
Yep.
mean, I'm thinking that Andrew, we can share these slides with everyone through your guys' Discord, so you can all see all the little tips that we mentioned, and they can take them home.
Yeah, that'd be phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah,
great
we
stuff.
will do that.
Let's see. We had some other questions. One was, can you give some examples of the CMS you've talked about?
There are some CMS software that had been published already, like Xlog from Keywords, for example, and some other languages that you can use to make your own CMS as OSs or maybe LAMs. So this is very technical, but if you need more info about this, just ask about it. We will talk to you later. No problem at all.
Yeah. Also, you can use Trello, and you
Yeah,
can use Jira. That's
Jira.
Jira.
Yep.
Those are very, very cool CMS tools. These last two
Yep.
are pretty cool as far as I'm concerned, right?
Yep.
Nice. All right. It looks like we got two more. So you guys had an engaging talk here. All right. So this was a follow-up question. If an indie can really only do one other localization as a target, what would be the best bang for their buck? Assuming it's from U.S. English to another country as a big opportunity right now.
That's a very good question, and it's a bit of a follow-up, right? From that first one. I would say that I mean I'm not trying to be repetitive here, but to do your research. I mean, we talk about China, right? About how in China alone there are more players, just players, not even the whole country, right? Just players that are even bigger than the population of the US, France, UK, Japan. I mean, Simplified Chinese is a good language to translate if you need a language, right? Also, if you're based in the US, just in the US alone, there are like, I don't want to say the numbers wrong, but I believe that there are more than 30 million Spanish speakers in the US alone. We're not talking about Spain. We're not talking about South America. Mind that Spanish from Spain is different from Latin America from Spain, and there is a variant of Spanish for the US. But I mean, do your research. Try to see where your game will work best. Newzoo, it's an amazing site for you to check. That's new, like NEW and Zoo. ZOO. They have updated numbers for all of the gaming hubs everywhere. Finland, don't forget about Finland. Finnish is also a good language to aim.
All right, let's see. We have another one. How can we tell if a translator or language service provider is the best fit for my game? This is a nice one for insider knowledge.
Well, as we talk in a conference, you have to look for a log team that is on the same page as you are. You have to share the philosophy. They have to share the vision of your game, and also do some research. I mean, you can ask for references.
Yeah.
What games have they localized before? Or maybe if you are contacting translators, freelancers, you can also ask for references. We all know each other in this little world, so industry. So you can always have some information about the log companies.
Yeah, and if I have to add to that, I mean, communication is key to any team, for that matter, right? But in our industry, not just localization, but also gaming, if you worked on a pretty cool game, in case there's any NDA that forbids you from speaking about it, you are going to want people to know about it, right? So, yeah, as for references, if they have localized a game that you know or you don't know, go check it out and communicate. I mean, another important thing, maybe just like a last thing, try to see if it is a freelance or an LSP, what genres are their favorite, or what genres they have worked on, right? So you can see if they are a right fit too.
Yep.
All right, here's another one. I've heard about translation memories. What are they and how do they affect the localization?
So I think that's mine, yes.
I believe that's yours. It's a bit more technical, Sarah.
Well, a translation memory, a TM, as we call it, is basically a database that stores sentences, paragraphs, or segments, as we call it, that you have translated before. And then it automatically suggests identical or similar matches for new documents to be translated. And it is the key for the translation and localization process. It improves the quality, the speed, the consistency, and also the efficiency for every translation job. And also, I know you want this. It saves a lot of money and time. So it is important to have a cut tool, a translation tool, and a TM translation memory for your localization.
Let's point out something here for everyone that's watching this. Translation memory, it's not the same as, I don't know, Google Translator or anything like that, right? It always needs someone behind on the other side of the keyboard, right, to check everything, because the thing that happens with machine translation in video games is that they usually need a huge database to act on their own, right? And that's something that it's yet to be applicable fully in video games, right? So it saves a lot of localization processes. It saves a lot. But sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No. It's just as you were saying that in a conference we talked about this. A machine can take into account the culture, the context, the tone of the speech. So we as professionals can say that machine translation can do the job for us. No, that is not going to happen.
Right. It's a tool. It's a means to an end, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it always needs a person, a translator, an editor, or wherever to check that the translation is correct.
Yeah, it's better than the answer I probably would have submitted there. It sounds like some cool noir cyberpunk like game translation memories.
Yeah.
Yep. You got it. You got it. Buggy translation.
So we
the
got
fever bag.
that's it.
Yeah.
So we got one last question, and it is a follow up to the one about the language service providers, how to find someone for that. So this is, how can we evaluate the quality of a localization?
Well, first of all, about with testing. Testing is the first step to evaluate the quality of the translation and the localization. That's why we talked about testers, and that testers had to be native speakers of the localized languages. Okay, that's the first evaluation that you must have. And finally, the users, not Alexis, the gamers, they will always tweet about it. They will always talk about it.
Yeah, and if you want to be cautious and avoid angry tweets, we all want to avoid angry tweets. Every time because angry tweets is like a common expression nowadays, right? Every time that I think about angry tweets, I imagine the little blue bird in Angry Birds.
Angry Birds, yeah.
Like just flying towards your game, just trying to trash it. But a good practice is that maybe with a small NDA signed with the person or the company that you're aiming to work with, maybe send them like a little test for them to work on, to see on a language that you might have someone to check it internally. That's always a good way to go. That might help you save some problems. If you have no reference, if you have nothing that we already discussed, maybe that's a way to go, right? Send them a little test.
Yep.
Man, that was fantastic. All right, so those are all the questions. Everyone in chat,
Thank you.
hit them with some happy emotes, some cheers for the awesome job they did, and for being our sponsors, which is really amazing. Year 1, everyone's killing it. Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.